The third from the 7 habits of highly effective Christians is eternal things first. Now we all know that there are so many things in our life that threatens to distract us away from our eternal purpose in God. In the previous habit, we've already learned about how we should fix our eyes and our attention, our focus upon the eternal things as opposed to the temporal. But then we live in a modern era where we are constantly bombarded by a barrage of distractions, one after another, that is demanding our attention all the time. And these distractions might actually gradually degrade our lives slowly to the point where it's going to bring us sudden destruction in the end. And usually when we least expect it to happen. Today we're going to learn a case study from King David, and this is taken from 2 Samuel 11, verse 1 to 5, about the danger of distractions. In the spring, when kings go forth to battle, David sent Joab with his servants and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, when there he saw a woman bathing, and she was very lovely to behold. David sent and inquired about the woman. One said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" And then David sent messengers and took her. And she came in to him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness. Then she returned to her home. And the woman became pregnant and sent a message to tell David, I'm pregnant, I'm with a child. Now, we can learn from King David right from the first verse. It is said here, this is a time when kings go for battle. And David was no exception. David was supposed to be out there in the battlefield, but instead, he didn't go, but he sent his general, he sent his soldiers to do the job that he was supposed to lead in the first place. And then, verse 2, it is said that instead of going to battle, David was up at his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house. And when from there he saw a woman bathing, he was distracted from his mission as a king. When he was supposed to be fighting in a battle, he was up there while just relaxing and enjoying himself. And then this is going to lead to something that is really, really bad. Now, it began as a one-night stand in David's mind. He thought that it would be nothing other than just some fun. But the story revealed later on how Bathsheba became pregnant, and from that pregnancy, David will have to cover it up by trying to lie about it by asking his husband, who has just come back from battle, to lie with his wife. But as God would have it, Uriah, the husband, didn't want to do that. And instead, because David ran out of ideas, one thing led to another. David sent Uriah to the battlefield where is the fiercest, and David commanded his general to leave Uriah where the fiercest battle happened so that he would be left to his death. So one thing led to another. From one night stand, it led to a lie, and then another lie, and then a plot for murder, and in the end, it led to both adultery and murder. From King David, a man after God's own heart? You bet. That is the danger of distractions. It can happen to all of us. It can happen to any of us if we are not careful. And one lesson that we're going to learn is that if you don't fight the battle that God has prepared for you, you'll be fighting another battle you're unprepared for. If you don't fight the battle that God has prepared for you, you will be fighting another battle that you are unprepared for. Now, living in this modern era is not easy. We are constantly bombarded by all sorts of distractions all around us, especially with the demand of technology and all the gadgets that we have. We are actually carrying our distractions around. In this modern era, there is a great need for us to be amused and be entertained. And the need seems to be greater and greater by the day. And let's look at this word amusement. Amusement literally means the state of not thinking. Although entertainment once in a while to relieve ourselves from stress is a good thing for us, when it is done to the extreme, it can actually be dangerous because it has the potential to distract us from the really important things in life. Now, usually, small little distractions might seem harmless in the beginning. Have you ever been driving in a car and then suddenly a bug just flew into your car? Well, it's pretty distracting, isn't it? And that bug will fly around and take your focus off the route for a little while, and you're trying to sweat it away. And more often than not, you're probably going to fail in your attempt. And you are taking your eyes off the route. You think that it's all right, you can still handle it, and then suddenly, wham! Distraction in the form of a car accident will suddenly hit you when you expect it the least. Now, if somebody is sweating up a bug, I'm not going to sit in that car. I'm getting out of there. Because little distractions such like that, we know can lead to a dangerous path. It can even lead to death. Not exercising for a day or two and then being distracted by all the good food will seem alright for a while. Slowly and slowly, we begin missing exercising and all the much needed workouts. And slowly, we begin to indulge in good food and forget about healthy eating. Slowly and slowly, we begin to not pay attention to having a good rest cycle daily. And then suddenly, obesity and sickness will hit us like a ton of brick right in our face. Sin works on the same principle. We compromise here and there slowly and slowly, and we seem to be able to get with things that seem harmless to our faith. Slowly and slowly, we are missing a day or two of prayer and devotional. And then slowly and slowly, gradually it became missing a week here and there, a week or two here and there. And then slowly and slowly, we stop going to church. And then suddenly, we find ourselves losing the passion for God. And suddenly, we find ourselves getting into big trouble caused by sin. Just like King David. Slowly and slowly, he compromised by not going to war with all the other kings as he was supposed to. So slowly and slowly, although he got away with it, he began to compromise because of his attraction to Bathsheba. Gradually, it led to another lie, another cover-up, and then slowly it led to another evil plan to murder her husband. And then in the end, suddenly, wham! It led to the sin of murder and adultery. What started off as a one-night stand ended as a murder and adultery, with the consequences of what happened later on in the life of King David. We can see the devastating danger of sins. It's going to destroy you in the end, and it's going to come suddenly when you least expect it to be. Well, we read later on, King David's story was pretty sad. I mean, he had to see the death of his son the son that Bathsheba bore in the adulterous relationship. And later on in the development of the story of King David, we will see that one sin led to another. And that is sin. You might enjoy it for a little while, but later on you're going to reap the consequences too great that you will not be able to pay for it. We read in the story of King David how his other sons actually rebelled against him, and one of them even actually seek his death, tried to kill him. Can you imagine that? And all this started off from a distraction. So, in order to fight distraction, what do we need to do? We need to focus on the eternal. Focus and fix our eyes upon Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Learn the lesson from King David. Fight the right battle, or otherwise you're going to be fighting another battle that you are unprepared for. Battles that result from your disobedience and your sins. Now let's look at another king. And this king is the direct descendant of King David. In fact, he was the son of the result of King David's marriage to Bathsheba. That is King Solomon. Now, if a man after God's own heart, such as David, fell into the sin and caused by distraction in the first place, King Solomon was described in the Bible as the wisest man ever alive. But yet, King Solomon, as we read later on in this story, had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And the scripture says that in the latter years of his life, David's heart was captured by his many wives. And many of these wives are taken from foreign land. People who worship another god. People who worship Baal. People who worship idols. And Solomon's heart was captured by these women. And slowly, what began as love for his wife suddenly led to Solomon's heart being driven away from the Lord God, his God, to all these foreign idols that led to King Solomon's destruction in the end. You see, Proverbs 1 verse 7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." So we learn here that true wisdom begins and ends with God. True wisdom begins and ends with God. Do not face the same distractions that King Solomon had faced. 1,000 women in your lives? Even one is enough to distract you away from your eternal purpose in God, let alone 1,000. Well, let's see another example from the Bible, from what the Bible described as the strongest man ever alive. That is Samson. Now, we are all familiar with Samson's story about how he was distracted by Delilah, and how Delilah, one time after another, tries to seduce him in the adulterous relationships, and to ask Samson of his the secret of his strength. And Samson thought that he could get away with it one time after another. So he told Delilah all the lies. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it happened at least 3 times. And he got away with each time of it. Now, here is my question. If you are Samson, and you know that right after what you tell the woman on your side, the secret to your strength, and then the very next day, the enemy seems to know about it, won't you get suspicious about it? I would be if I'm Samson. But I believe at that time, Samson was distracted by this woman, although he knew at his very heart that this woman is actually betraying him. one time after another. But Samson was playing with sin. Slowly and slowly, he thought he could get away with his adulterous relationship with this Delilah. And then suddenly, one day, he finally gave in and told Delilah the true secret of his story that lies in his hair. And the next morning, he found himself bald. And this time, not like the other time, he couldn't get away with it. This time, the enemy actually got a hold of him because God had left and deserted him. He had given the most precious treasure in his life to a woman just like that. And this all started off from distractions. So we have to be very careful. If we are distracted from the most important thing, we will lose our focus on the eternal. The strongest man is he who kneels daily before God. The strongest man is he who kneels daily before God. Now, what is the lesson that we can learn from all these three biblical characters? The common theme that we see in all these three stories is that they are all led astray by women. So be very careful. There are a few things that a man couldn't resist in this life. There are a few distractions that a man should watch out for. Number one is, or from what I heard as the 3 Gs. Number one is the girls. Number two is the glory. Number three is the gold. Or is women, it is wealth, and it is positions that might distract us away from our eternal purposes in God. So habit 3 talks about how we can place eternal things first and not be distracted by the temporal that are distracting us. Now let's carry out a quick survey about how an average employed person ages 25 to 54 with children use up their time. You can see here from a total of 24 hours, we spend about 7.6 hours sleeping. Working and related activities will take up another 8.6 hours. Leisure and sports, 2.6 hours. Household activities, 1.1 hours. Eating and drinking, 1.1 hours. Caring for others, 1.2 hours. And then if you add up all this together, you only have 1.8 hours for other things. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean to us? How much time that we really have in this life? Let's say, suppose we are to live up to 78 years old. Let's see typically how we spend that time. Let's begin with sleeping. We spend a third of our life sleeping. So that translates to 28.3 years. And then we spend most of our time working, 10.5 years. And in this digital era, in this IT and technologically advanced era, we will spend a lot of our time on social networks, such as TV, video games, computer, the web, internet. This will take up 9 years of our life. How about doing chores? Daily necessities. Buying groceries, cleaning up the house. That will take up 6 years of your life. Eating and drinking, this is another big one. That will only take you 4 years of your life. Not so bad. Education, that's going to take you another 3.5 years of your life. Personal grooming, 2.5 years. Going to toilet and all those things. Shopping will take another 2.5 years of your life. Childcare will take 1.5 years of your life. Commuting will take 1.3 years of your life. So if you add all of these up together, note this, you only have 9 years left in your life. How are you going to spend it? 9 years out of 78 years. That is just a little bit over, 20%. That's not a lot. I'm sorry, that's not even 20%. That's just a little bit over 10%. So how much time do we really have in this life? The answer is not much. Are you going to focus on eternal things, or are you going to focus that 9 years on the temporal things? You see, if we are distracted, slowly and slowly, those 9 years will just ebb away. And you're going to find yourself one day not having done much for your own eternity. So we have to guard our time very, very carefully. Now, I once heard there are 3 stages in our life. When we are teenagers, we have all the time in the world and energy, but no money. And then when we are a little bit older, we start to go into the workforce, and then we have all the money and energy in the world, but now we have no time. And now we are old. You have all the time and money in the world, but then you have no more energy. So make your decisions wisely. Next thing, I would like to introduce what I call the matrix of urgent and important things. And it can be broken into 4 quadrants. As you can see, the first quadrant is the urgent and important quadrant. Second quadrant is the not urgent but important quadrant. And then the third quadrant is urgent and not important. And the fourth quadrant is not urgent and not important. Now let's look more closer to what they really mean. Urgent important quadrant are things such as crisis, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects, meetings, and preparations. Or in other words, they're urgent, they're important, you have to deal with them right now, or something really bad is going to happen to you. Not urgent but important are things that are really important, but you don't have them to do them straight away. Now the difference between this quadrant, the second quadrant, and the first quadrant is these are things that are important, but if you put them off until the last minute, then they are going to be the first quadrant stuff. So the second quadrant, things such as preparation, prevention, values clarification, planning, relationship building, true recreation, and empowerment. Now these are all things that are important, but they are not pressing. You don't have to do them straight away. If you don't carry them out right now, you're not going to suffer the consequences of it. But if you delay it long enough, one day it's going to be crisis that you have to deal with. Third quadrant talks about urgent, not important things, such as interruptions, phone calls, some emails, some reports, some meetings, many proximate, pressing matters, many popular activities. And finally, the not urgent and not important matrix. These are the trivia, busy work, some phone calls, time wasters, escape activities, irrelevant mail, excessive TV. These are things that are done in excess. So now, I'd like you to do this thing. Let's take a time audit of all your daily activities. Where and in which quadrant do you spend most of your time at? Think about it. Do you spend most of your time in the first quadrant, handling crises all the time, putting out fires all the time? Or are you a person who is a planner? You look far ahead in time and you plan for the important things in your life and you decide when you're going to actually do them. Or are you a person who's constantly in the third quadrant? You're easily interruptible. You're always distracted by the phone calls, the emails, the web, the internet, hours and hours of phone calls, and then basically whatever people ask you to do, you're just going to do them. A lot of popular activities. Or are you a person who are always involved in the fourth quadrant activities, such as excessive TV, reruns of movies that you have watched like 2-3 times, escape activities, endless entertainment. Remember from our discussion earlier, when you are amused, when you entertain, you are in a state of not thinking. You might be amused, but you are not thinking. And that can be very dangerous. Well, remember, Although relaxation and entertainment, if not done excessively, is actually a quadrant 2 thing. It's actually a quadrant 2 activity. But if you do it in excess, if you carry it out to the extreme, it can actually be quadrant 4. So take a time audit of the way you've lived your life, all your daily activities. Where are you? Which quadrant do you spend most of your time? All right, let's look at the results. If the answer is the first quadrant, then you are a procrastinator. You always do things that are both urgent and important. These are things that are important, but you like to put off until it becomes a crisis. Some people secretly like it that way because they're addicted to urgency and it gives them a rush to do things at the last minute. However, we can see that the results of being in quadrant 1 will be stress and anxiety. You're going to experience burnout, and at best, you can only have mediocre performance because excellent work cannot be done in the crunch of time. Now, things that procrastinator do will be things such as exam tomorrow, friends get injured, late for work, project due today, car breaks down. These are all important things, but you are like a firefighters. They have to put out fire here and there every time because you delay and you ignore them for a pretty long time until it becomes a problem. You see, important things not dealt with in the first place will accumulate and become a time bomb waiting to explode when you least expect it to be. If you spend most of your time in let's save the best for the last. In the third quadrant, let's start with the next one in the third quadrant, then you are a yes man. You're always interruptible by the unimportant phone calls, interruptions, other people's small problems, peer pressure. Now, quadrant 3 represents things that are urgent but not important. It's characterized by trying to please other people and responding to their every desire. It is a deceptive quadrant because it has the appearance of appearing important, but it actually is not. For example, when a phone rings, it seems like it's very urgent, but often the conversation is so unimportant. The worst is when you get a call asking you to join insurance or some telemarketing gimmicks. You're just wasting your time. Quadrant 3 is loaded with activities. They're important to other people, but are not important to you. Things that you would like to say no to, but can't because you're afraid of losing the relationship or offending somebody. Remember, we all have a little quadrant 3 inside all of us, but we won't accomplish much if we say yes to everything, and we will never learn to focus on what's important. And the results of spending too much time in quadrant 3 will be reputation for being a people pleaser, lack of discipline, and feeling like a doormat for others to wipe their feet on. What about quadrant 4? If you are in quadrant 4 all the time, then you are a slacker. Quadrant 4 is a quadrant of waste and excess. Now, these are activities. They are neither urgent nor important. Things such as too much TV, endless phone calls, excessive phone games, computer games, mall marathons, time wasters. These activities are neither urgent nor important. The slacker loves anything in excess, like too much TV, too much sleep, too many video games, too much time on the web, regular 3-hour phone calls, and mall marathons each weekend. Now, going to movies, chatting on the web, or just hanging out are part of a healthy lifestyle. However, it's only when they are done in excess that they become a waste of time. Watching a TV show rerun for a second, third, and fourth time until 2 a.m. turns a relaxing evening into a wasted one. And the results of living in the fourth quadrant are lack of responsibility, guilt, and flakiness. All right, let's come back to the best quadrant. We've saved the best for the last. If you are a quadrant 2 person, then you are the prioritizer. Quadrant 2 is made of things that are important but not urgent. Things such as relaxation, building friendships, exercising, planning ahead, reviewing and reflecting on life goals, and being on time. It's the quadrant of excellence, the place where you want to be. People who live in quadrant 2 prioritizes the important things in life first, and sees usually on top of things, as it makes it a habit to plan ahead. Things such as spending quality time with family, regular exercise, serving in a ministry, making time to pray and read the scriptures, and other spiritual disciplines such as making disciples and evangelisms are all part of things found in this quadrant. But if you just continue to put it off, they're eventually going to become quadrant 1 activities. Or even worse, you're not going to do them at all. They are not urgent activities that need to be done right here and right now. However, they will carry eternal values and significance if we do them regularly. With so many people, things, and activities in our life demanding for our attention and time, we just have to say no to the unimportant plan and then prioritize on the really important eternal things that carry eternal values. And the results of living quadrant 2 are control of your life. You're going to experience balance, and you will experience high performance as well. Now, what should we do with all of these quadrants? Because I believe that we are all over the place. There will be a quadrant where we are spending time predominantly most of the time, but we do have, each of these quadrants in us. But how do we deal with that? Let's look at them. All right, we talk about the results of each of these quadrants. The first quadrant is the results will be time spent in crisis, deadlines, results in stress, burnout. If you're in quadrant 2, this will be time spent in growth, development, results in the long-term focus and success. If you spend most of your time in quadrant 3, it will be time spent in interruptions, results in short-term focus. Quadrant 4, time spent in time wasters, results in frustration and lack of progress. So this is just a recap of what we have just covered. Okay, how are we going to deal with that? First quadrant is you have to decide when to do it. Or in other words, shrink quadrant 1 by procrastinating less. There will always be things in this quadrant, but if you can cut your procrastination in half by doing the important things early, you will be in quadrant 1 less often, and less quadrant 1 means less stress. Let's talk about the third quadrant, the yes man quadrant. Say no to quadrant 3 activities. Learn to say no to unimportant things that will pull you away from the more important ones. Do not be so interruptible. Trying to please everyone is like a dog trying to catch his tail. Remember, when you are saying no to unimportant things, you are really saying yes to the more important ones. What about quadrant 4? Well, we want to cut down on the quadrant 4 slacker activities. Don't stop doing all these things altogether. Just do them less often. Our life here on earth is short. We don't have much time to waste. Shift this time to quadrant 2. In fact, you want to cut down on all the other quadrants except quadrant 2, so that you might have more time to do the important but not urgent things. Remember, relaxation is quadrant 2, but excessive relaxation is quadrant 4. Now, what about quadrant 2, the prioritizer? You want to spend more time in quadrant 2. It will help you to manage your time and put eternal things first. Pick up a planner and plan weekly. Use a planner of some sort that has a calendar and a space to write down on them. Appointments and assignments, to-do lists and goals. A planner is not designed to tie you down, but to free you up instead. And with a planner, you no longer have to worry about forgetting things or double booking yourself. Plan weekly. Take 15 minutes each week to plan your week, and then just watch a difference that it will make in your life. Why weekly? Because we think in weeks, and daily planning is just too narrow a focus, and monthly planning too broad a focus. Now, the next thing I would like to talk about is the pyramid of effectiveness. Now, we all know that starting from the bottom pyramid, we can exchange our time, and our effort, our talent, whatever it is, our resources, for tasks that will give us money back in return. But at the very bottom of this pyramid are $0 tasks per hour tasks. These are things that even if you do them, they're just distractions. They're not going to give you any return back at all. Now, these are things such as being busy with running errands and doing things that are just going to lead you nowhere, quote-unquote activities. And then a little bit higher than the quote-unquote activities or the $0 per hour tax is the low dollar per hour tax. Now, to give you an idea, imagine a person who's working in a fast food restaurant. They are being paid for their time only the minimal amount. Well, this is low dollar value activities where you exchange your time for some money, but not much usually. And then we have the high dollar per hour tax. Now, normally this will correspond with jobs that will give you a higher return on your money. This will be the white collar jobs, professional jobs. They will pay you back money that is higher in amount. And then even higher than this level is the high lifetime value activities. Now, what are these? You can probably create a business with a system that will run itself to generate you passive income month after month. You can be doing things to create that system, to strengthen that system. You can be doing things to train up and delegate tasks to your workers so that the job still get done, but in the end you still get paid. Now, so far we've only been looking at the monetary value of our time. But then at the very top, at the very pinnacle of this pyramid is the high eternal values activities. These will be things such as serving the poor. It will be things such as, devotional time with the Lord. It will be time spent such as seeking out and reaching out to the lost. This will be activities done that will not give you any much financial return, but they will definitely carry eternal significance or consequences in them. When you spend money on the poor, when you go out there and evangelize to the lost out there, it seems like a lost time on your part. And from the world's standpoint, that seems to be a very stupid thing to do. But however, from eternal perspective, that is actually something that is very wise. Now, I used this analogy before of the Monopoly game. While you are so engrossed in the overwhelming during the Monopoly game, the paper money seems to be so big during the game. But the moment that you stop, that you quit playing the game, the Monopoly money means nothing to you. It is worthless. But suppose during the game somebody wants to exchange the fake Monopoly money with the real paper money. A wise person is somebody who will exchange, who will do the transfer, the trading. So that is exactly what a wise person here on earth who is driven by eternities will do. They will exchange whatever resources that they have down here on earth, such as their time, their money, their talent, something that they cannot carry with them to eternity, with something that carries eternal values. Now, these are things that I mentioned before, such as helping out at the local old folks home, the orphanage, visiting the poor and helping them, having mercy on them, doing all the best that you can to contribute to charity, to go out on a mission trip, to evangelize to the lost, to disciple another younger Christian. Now, these are all things, example of things that have high eternal values. So carry, yourself wisely. Do not spend time on the things in life that will not give you much effectiveness in the end. Well, we all know that high eternal values are really nice from the eternal perspective. However, we still have to deal with the fact that we need money in order to survive. Therefore, I would say that the best place to be is in the high lifetime value and the high eternal values. You want to somehow come up with a business that will help support your ministry so that you don't have to be tied up by the job that requires all of your time. So high lifetime value, think about a system, think about a business that will not take so much of your time and will give you flexibility so you can spare yourself some time to do the really important things in life. Okay, the next thing I would like to talk about is this experiment where we're going to fill up 2 jars with the same materials, really. Only in the first jar, what we're going to do is we're going to get a bucket and we're going to fill it full with pebbles, small pebbles first. And then after that, we'll put in several big rocks into it on top of the pebbles. But you're going to find that in the first bucket, they're not all going to fit. So what you do is you empty the bucket and you start all over. This time you put in the big rocks first in the bucket, followed by the pebbles. And something very funny will happen. The pebbles will start to neatly fill in the spaces around the big rocks. And this time it all fits. The difference is just in the order in which the rocks and the pebbles were placed in the bucket. If you put the pebbles in first, the big rocks don't all fit. But if you put the big rocks in first, everything fits, big rocks and pebbles. Well, this is a metaphor. Big rocks represent your most important things in life, whereas pebbles represent all the little everyday things that suck up your time. Things such as chores, busy work, phone calls, and interruptions. So moral of the story is, if you don't schedule your big rocks in first, they just won't get done. Now let's look at rocks, pebbles, sand, and water. Rocks represent your highest priority projects and deadlines with the greatest value, often important but not urgent tasks that move you towards your goal. Pebbles represent tasks that are urgent and important. Sand. Now add sand to fill your jar. In other words, schedule urgent but not important tasks. Only after important tasks. And lastly, water. Finally, pour water into your jar. These are trivial time wasters. And if you look at it, rocks will be your quadrant 2 activities. Pebbles will be the quadrant 1 activities. Sand will be urgent but not important. This will be quadrant 3. And finally, water, that's your quadrant 4 activities. So, what are your big rocks? The first step is you need to identify your big rocks. Ask yourself, what are the most important things that I need to do this weekend? What are some of the important things that you need to do this week? These are your big rocks. They are sort of like mini goals, and they should be tied to your mission statement and longer term goals. And you'll find that most of them will be in quadrant 2. And another way to identify your big rocks is to think through the key role in your life, such as your role as a student, as a friend, as a family member, worker, as a minister, individual, husband and wife, and whatever else you do, and then come up with 1 or 2 most important things that you want to get done in each role. And then the second step is to block out time for your big rocks. The third step is you want to schedule everything else. Put everything into a schedule. Once you have your big rocks book, schedule in all of your other to-dos, your daily tasks, and your appointments. Here's where the pebbles go. You may also want to take a look ahead on your calendar and record upcoming events and activities like a vacation, concert, or birthday. You don't want to miss them. And then the last step is to adapt daily. With your weekly plan in place, adapt each day as needed. You probably need to rearrange your big rocks and pebbles now and then. The simple act of planning ahead each week will help you focus on your big rock and consequently accomplish so much more, even if you don't get through accomplishing everything on your list. Or in summary, living in the light of eternity should and will change your priorities in life. If you are to choose between purpose, passion, and profit, purpose being the things that you are meant to do in life, passion being the things that drive you in life, and profit, what pays you, which one are you going to choose? Of course, the ideal scenario is the place where all the three intersect each other. But if you are to choose one, and you are to prioritize, whether it's purpose, passion, or profit, which one are you going to choose? Now, in the corporate world, a lot of people will put pay or profit as the number one priority. But being a person with eternity in mind, somebody whose mind has been renewed, this should not be the first priority in our life. In fact, we should put purpose as the number one thing in our life. Now, I know of this man by the name of Dylan Wilk, who became a multi-millionaire at the age of 25. He had all the money in the world and everything that a 25-year-old would ask for. However, one day he prayed to God and asked God, why did God make him rich? Now, I know a lot of people will pray, why did God make them poor? But this is the first time I've heard of anyone who asks God why they are rich in the first place. And he realized that even though he had a lot of sports cars, he even drove a helicopter in going to work, and he had everything that a young man would ask for in life, he felt so empty. He still felt like something was missing in his life. And this was the time in his life when he took an honest look at his life and asked what is really important in life. And to his amazement, it wasn't really money, because it didn't really give him a sense of fulfillment. It didn't give him like a sense of purpose in life. So he took about half a year just to go around the world to look for a charity or organization where he can probably do some charitable work and do some good with his money. And in these 6 months, what he discovered was that pleasure comes at a high price tag, whereas happiness comes when you are giving your money away. And in the end, Dylan Wilk was involved with this charity organization called Kawat Galinga. It's a non-profit organization in Philippines that helps the poor to build houses for them. And he found out that actually when you fulfill your purpose in life, that is when you feel the most joyful in life. So as a Christian, as a born-again Christian who knows our eternal purpose in God, profit and passion shouldn't occupy the first priorities in our life. Rather, it should be our purpose. That is what we are meant to do. So whenever you have time that you need to spend, whenever you have money that you're going to spend, think about what is the purpose behind everything that you're doing. Does it have any eternal purpose? Does it carry any eternal consequences or significance behind what you're doing or behind how you're going to spend your money and how you're going to spend your time? And that will help you to determine whether you should put that particular activity or how you're going to spend your time or money as whether it's important or not in your life. So in closing, I'd like to stress that eternity is really a long time to be wrong. You want to have it right. And in closing, I'd just like to encourage you with this scripture taken from Psalm 90, verse 12. Teach us to make the most of our time so that we may grow in wisdom. Because our time here on earth is so short, we want to make sure that we will make the most of the brief time that we have here on earth. How you live your life daily is going to affect how you're going to live your life in the end. And eventually, that is going to also determine how you're going to live in eternity. Therefore, the way you live your life daily will eventually determine how you're going to live your life in eternity. So live your life wisely by putting eternal things first.